Now you do that, and as the years go on, the separation that you have with your competitors and your peers just grows larger and larger and larger and larger and larger. And by year 5 or 6, doesn't matter what kind of work they do in the summer, they're never going to catch up because you're 5 years behind. Right? So it makes sense to get up and start your day early because you can get more work in.
Is that genetic? Or is that something you ingrained and trained yourself?
No, it was
Who
just,
taught you that?
For me, it was just common sense. Like I can if I start earlier, I can train more hours, and I know the other guys aren't doing it because I know what their training schedule is, right? So I know if I do this consistently over time, the gap's just going to widen and widen and widen and widen and widen, and they won't be able to get that back. Mm-hmm. So to me, it was just common sense and like thinking, how can I get an advantage? Oh, start earlier. Yeah, let's do that.
How do you develop that, or where do you learn that from?
Well, I think it's just it's just a matter of what's important to you, and what's important to you for whatever reason. I felt like I didn't feel good about myself if I wasn't doing everything I could to be the best version of myself. If I felt like I left anything on the table, it would eat away at me. I wouldn't be able to look myself in the mirror. Right? So the reason why I can retire now and be completely comfortable about it because I know that I've done everything I could to be the best basketball player I could be. And so that's where it comes from for me. You can't leave any stone unturned.
I tell one of my mentors, like, yo, I did this. I'm so proud. And in my mind, this mentor is gonna say, yo, you are getting it. He said, and I'm telling you, I'm like for like 3 minutes straight talking about all the stuff that I accomplished today, why I'm so tired. And he said, how much money did you make? And I said, I got to lay the foundation. You know what I mean? I didn't really make he said, well, why didn't you do any? He said, out of all the stuff that you told me, none of it is money making activity. I was impressing myself with being busy. I was impressing. I was so in love with the struggle and the grind, I lost sight of the major objective, which is to become successful. How do I become successful? How do I make some money? How do I quit this job? And that's when I realized it's just a mindset shift. When you start focusing on other things, my focus was, how can I tell a cool story for today of how hard I worked?
Yeah.
And if I just rerouted my mind to how much money did I make? Yeah. How close am I to leaving my job right now? Not the feeling of I'll be out there soon, but like how close am I really? And it was a major game changer for me.
Well, what are the activities that make you a lot of money in real estate? Luckily, there's only 5, and it's a simple acronym. It's PLANS. The P stands for prospecting. These are new conversations, first-time conversations with would-be buyer and sellers. Ton of lead sources you can use for this. L is lead follow-up. So most prospects are not ready to transact like the first time you talk with them. It could be 8 to 10 conversations. It could be 3, 6, 12 months from now, 24 months from now. And so you put them in your CRM and you set a time to follow up with them. Every day you time block for lead follow-up. A is appointments. These are buyer consultations and seller consultations. This is earning new business. N is negotiations. So not appraisal negotiations, not inspection repair negotiations. This is getting a buyer under contract, getting a seller under contract for the first time. And S is systems. A business is a system of systems. That's all that it is. And your ability to grow your sales and scale your business depends on the systems you put in place. So everything you could think of in business is a system of systems. So S is system. So PLANS, and you will win the game.
But here's the thing, guys. When we get into this, a lot of times people go into this with the specific mindset. And I think that mindset doesn't necessarily serve us. And that's really what I want to go into today. Because if you're going to really, really succeed at anything, especially in the real estate business, you have to get comfortable with what it is that we do. And I'm sorry. And I know that, salespeople have this real bad moniker about them. But what you're doing is sales, guys. And when I say sales, what do I mean? I mean that you're getting someone to want to interact with you in a business transaction, right? That's essentially what we're doing. And we call it sales because that's, at the end of the day, what you're doing. A real estate agent is a salesperson, right? But what they are is a sales professional. If you guys are going to be real estate investors, you have to get really good with sales conversations. Why? Well, because one, you don't know these people. Two, you're calling them, and potentially, if you're going direct to seller, you're getting a seller to do something that they hadn't originally thought about doing. If you're dealing with an agent, you have to get them to say, okay, there's a lot of investors that exist in the real estate space. Why do I want to work with Tyler? Why do I want to work with Angie and Dom? Why do I want to work with Mike versus all of the other investors that are out there? There are a lot of people in this space who do real estate business with real estate agents every single month. Look at Jamil Damji, right? He does well over $1 million a year with one real estate agent. Why? Because he was willing to go out of his way to pick up the phone, make a phone call, build a relationship, and have that agent decide, you know what, of all the people on this planet, I want to continue to do business with Jamil Damji.
I remember I teach you there are 4 income producing activities. Number 1 is prospecting. Number 2 is lead follow-up. Number 3 is going on qualified appointments. And number 4 is negotiating contracts.
Amazing. Great to hear you're a realtor in Northern California. What I do better than anybody else is I solve sellers' problems. So if you ever hear of one where there are tax liens, it's in pre-foreclosure, there's no equity, whatever it might be, my goal is to be the tool in your tool belt that you use to solve that problem and get you your commission. And do you know of any like that right now, right? I love that line because it does a few different things. One, it shows you have a competent business model that's a little bit different than just a flipper.
Yeah.
2, you're showing your heart and you're like, oh, like an agent here's like, oh, like maybe he's like actually cares about sellers and cares about other human beings, not just a money guy. I would say those are like the main 2 things that it does that really separates you. And then you got to ask, like, do you know of anything right now? Right. And then there could be like a myriad of response. Sometimes they'll have something, you collect the info. Sometimes they don't have anything. Sometimes they start going to like, okay, but like, how much do you need off of the property? And I'm like, wait. I don't think you just heard me. I can give you my technical criteria, but what I'm really looking for are sellers with problems. That is my criteria.
Mm-hmm. Your brain doesn't think in systems when it comes to business. Your brain thinks, and I'm going to work. I got this idea and I'm going to grind. I'm going to go get this money. And in your head, even as you're telling me, you see yourself doing what you got to do because you got 20 years in promotion. Your brain thinks in work, and that is not how you make $1 million. I think you can make $1 million with just hard work, but your work is spread so thin amongst a bunch of different things, it's going to be impossible to scale something.
Pace basically challenged all of us to start a podcast, and I ended up starting a podcast. I'm wearing my hoodie from it. It's called Scorch the Fears. It's on my YouTube channel, right? You were a guest on it. Pace, Jamil, all of them have been guests on it. And it is easily one of the best things I've done just because, like, I don't think it's personally helped me, it hasn't helped grow my social media. It has, but not an insane amount yet. What it has done, though, is it's helped me connect with people who are way ahead of me, like you, Pace. I've now had Kent Clothier on there, Austin Zabak. I've had, who else have I had on that was really cool? Just all sorts of cool people, Vina Jetty, like all sorts of really cool people who are definitely above me. Mm-hmm. And now I have all of their phone numbers,
right? Or
or at least they'll respond to most of my DMs, right? And now it creates opportunities where I can come on to their podcast, right? Mm-hmm. That's why I think one of the main reasons why I was able to get on this podcast is obviously like the minimum requirements, but also part of it was that I met you at that mastermind, you were on my podcast, and so there's actually like a connection made there.
Right.
Gives an excuse to meet people who are way more successful than you.
There might be a lot of details, but at the end of the day, it's very simple, and it is very step by step. When you're talking to a real estate agent, I'm going to tell you the truth. In my opinion, Daniel's humble opinion, the most important thing that you need was something that a lot of people said in the comments, right? And it's confidence. If you guys have listened to any of my sales training, you guys have heard me say this 1,000,000 times over and over again. I'll continue to say it. There's 2 things that you need, right? So step 1, 2 things you need in every single solitary conversation, right? I think without these things, you're going to have a very hard time closing a deal. I think with these things, I don't care how much you do or don't know about the topic, you are going to put yourself in the best position to close a transaction. And I think those two things are, one, confidence, and then the second thing is control. You got to be in control of the direction that the conversation is going to go, right? If you're not in control of that, what happens is it'll start going off on tangents, and you're going to have a hard time getting to a positive direction in the conversation.
I wonder how many people are listening to this conversation are closely connected or married to the struggle, and you don't want to let it go. But you don't have to struggle to become successful. I thought that you had to struggle. The only reason I struggled so much is because I believe I had to struggle.
The challenges in the agent outreach model always is just building rapport with the agents and having them understand your value. I think that's the thing that most wholesalers miss is what is your value as a wholesaler to an agent, right? I think really wholesalers and most people in general are always just thinking about how can I benefit from this transaction,
Sure.
right? And you really need to think about, okay, what value am I actually bringing to this agent, right? And that's how I kind of developed what I call the Scorch method, which is my method of doing agent outreach. It's slightly different than anybody else's that I've personally ever heard of because it's so much more focused on really directing to the solving of the seller's problem and the agent's problem, but I don't say that. And the reason is most people are like, call an agent and are like, hey, I'm a real estate investor. I'm looking for fixers. What do you got? Right?
About me.
Yeah, like, right? And like, I mean, I know you were an agent at some point, like before you
Still
were
technically
even
licensed, but yeah.
yes, but you were like an agent. I
Yeah.
bet you got those calls, right? And probably when you heard that call, you're like, okay, cool, bro. Like whoever the hell you are on the phone, right? And so what make myself different is what I'll do is like, so let's say I'm calling you. It's like usually I start with texting outreach. So generally you've already decided that you're down to talk to me for a couple of minutes. And so a conversation would go something like this. I'll be like, hey, Steve, thank you so much for taking my call. I know you're super busy. You're a realtor in Northern California, right? And then you would say yes, hopefully. I like asking that question because sometimes they're a realtor in Arizona or they're just not a realtor at all, right? And you don't want to waste time. Usually they say yes. I always teach my people, just assume you're talking to the right person until that question, because there's no point in being like, how much, like, do you have a second or whatever? Like they already told you they want to talk to you. And then I really go into my favorite line ever, which is my tool in the tool belt line. It's like, amazing. Great to hear you're a realtor in Northern California. What I do better than anybody else is I solve sellers' problems. So if you ever hear of one where there are tax liens, it's in pre-foreclosure, there's no equity, whatever it might be, my goal is to be the tool in your tool belt that you use to solve that problem and get you your commission. And then do you know of any like that right now, right? I love that line because it does a few different things. One, it shows you have a competent business model that's a little bit different than just a flipper.
Yeah.
Two, you're showing your heart and you're like, oh, like an agent here's like, oh, like maybe he's like actually cares about sellers and cares about other human beings. He's not just a money guy. I would say those are like the main two things that it does that really separates you. And then you got to ask, like, do you know of anything right now? Right. And then there could be like a myriad of response. Sometimes they'll have something, you collect the info. Sometimes they don't have anything. Sometimes they start going to like, okay, but like, how much do you need off of the property? And I'm like, wait. I don't think you just heard me. I can give you my technical criteria, but what I'm really looking for are sellers with problems. That is my criteria, right? And there's just a bunch of different responses. But the last thing I like to end it with, and these are the 4 steps to an intro call we're starting to get into, is undying appreciation. So I think the thing that this world is missing most right now is the fact that nobody gets appreciated. So many people go throughout their lives and like doing like, if even like as a waiter, waitress, like they don't get appreciated for anything. They get a tip, but nobody's like, thank you so much. You did a great job, right? I think very few people get that. So when you start giving that to agents especially, but you really anybody, it creates a memory, it creates a connection. They're like, damn, I really like that guy. So I'd end it with something like, hey, thank you so much for taking the time. It means a lot. I cannot wait to get a deal with you, Steve. Let's get it, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. So 4 steps: introduce yourself, ask if they're a realtor. My tool in the tool belt line: do you actually know of anything right now? And then undying appreciation. And I feel like that's my competitive advantage in the agent outreach space.